Hello everybody, it's your old pal Tuna here and welcome back to another video. If this is your first time here, yes hello, my name is Tuna and I'm an illustrator and comic maker from Canada, but today I am taking a 2-week holiday to Italy and bringing you along with me. This video is in the style of a video diary, so I will be here on voiceover to guide you through everything we did. As we land here in Rome, I'm going to need you to turn off your air conditioning, close your windows, and turn up the heat for the authentic experience. There was a heat wave that left the temperature around 35 degrees Celsius for nearly our entire trip. The travel time to Italy from Vancouver was about 20 hours with a layover in Montreal, which in addition to the cost is why we decided to take such a long holiday. Operating on no sleep, we quickly found our hotel and a cafe nearby to enjoy our first espresso and cornetto, followed by a walk to Gelateria La Romana for our first gelato. Now, to keep ourselves awake through the jet lag, we stayed mobile and started our first walk around the city. We were staying quite near the Vatican at the top northwest corner of the city, so over the next few days we would traverse all around town from there. After a siesta, we tucked into our first bowls of pasta and headed to the Vatican to take another evening stroll. Our strategy, especially while we were in Rome, became to explore earlier in the day and later in the day and literally hide in our hotel from the sun from like 1 to 5 p.m. or so. It meant that we ended up having earlier dinners around 7 p.m., which is not typical in Italy, but it also meant that we could get a seat wherever we wanted without issue. And with that, our first day in Rome came to a close. Day 2, our first full day, was all about catching the sights. We got up around 5 a.m. to the sounds of hundreds of swifts flying above the city, and we made our way to the Trevi Fountain, which took my breath away way more than I expected. I'm not a huge buff for art history, but seeing the sculptures, especially throughout our trip, felt so meaningful. Even first thing in the morning, it was quite busy, which was frankly true of most of Rome and Florence as well, and we actually saw a proposal happen while we were there at the fountain, which was so cute. Many of the attractions are close by each other, so we walked south through the city to the Pantheon first. Mark brought his camera with him, so we were able to spend some good time taking in all the details of each place that we stopped. Everywhere, though, in central Rome is just filled with history. When they call it an open-air museum, they are not kidding. However, to enter into most of the attractions is pretty expensive, so we opted not to go into the Colosseum this time and just enjoyed it from the outside. I feel like in Italy, there's so much to see and choose from. We did have to make concessions for time and cost here and there, but one place I couldn't miss, Largo di Torre Argentina, was the first place I had pinned to visit when I was doing my research. It is the home of a cat colony. Oh, it's also where Julius Caesar was killed, but that's not as important. The cats here are really well cared for by volunteers, and seeing so many of them running around the ruins was fascinating and frankly an inspiring sight. If you are as big of a cat freak as I am, I would definitely add this one to your walking tour. There's also a gift shop on the premises, but it was only open for odd hours, so we didn't get to check that out. To beat the afternoon heat, we decided to book in for the Modern Art Gallery, knowing that we would be seeing a lot of Renaissance art in Florence later on. Now, I do like Renaissance art, but in hindsight now, I find that modern art, which they define as like 1800s, 1900s art, at the very least compared to the other stuff that we saw in Italy, there's a lot more variety to this modern art. It's not always religious imagery, but this museum had a lot of very interesting stuff. It was a lot of like the B-side stuff from artists like Van Gogh, and there was a Klimt, also a Mondrian, and a piece from Giacometti, who's one of my favorite artists, probably my favorite Italian artist, and I picked up my first souvenir. After a refresh, we went to find my next souvenir, which is Luce. I'm fascinated by her existence, and despite not being religious at all myself, I had to have a plush. She was designed by Tokidoki for the Vatican to celebrate the Jubilee, which is a major religious festival this year. Anyway, we had dinner near the Spanish Steps at a more touristy spot where I tried one of Rome's street foods, which is a fried zucchini blossom stuffed with mozzarella and anchovy. I love anchovy, and I love how salty the food in Italy generally was, totally to my taste. We took the metro to Rome Termini at the south side of the city to start off in a different exploration direction the next day. The Basilica of San Giovanni was our destination, one of the most grand churches in the city, and frankly, it was so damn grand, it made the rest of the churches we would see seem a little paltry. As we arrived first thing it opened, it was empty and quiet, save for a service in a side room where a small congregation were singing. Back out in the streets, we found a small cafe for more cornettos. There's a pistachio paste filling that most cafes have around there that's just to die for. And from there we realized we were near the Colosseum again, and we saw a tour group walking in a random direction. We decided to follow them and came upon the Basilica of San Pietro in Vincoli, where it turns out there was a Michelangelo statue, the Moses, set. The tour guide paid for the music and we got to enjoy it as well. After our siesta, the evening brought a stroll southwest to Trastevere, considered a youthful and artistic part of town. Everywhere in Rome had tons of graffiti and street art, and even more so in this funky area. I think it's kind of cool, though it is an interesting dichotomy of like old and new, really formal art and this like street art. Anyway, there wasn't a ton to explore in the streets, so we struck uphill to the Fontana dell'Acqua Paolo, another gorgeous fountain with a vista view of Rome. You can see how hazy it is from the heat in this, and again, imagine all of this happening in 35 degrees Celsius heat. Desperate for air conditioning, we headed to Palazzo Esposizione Roma for the Dolce & Gabbana couture exhibit. Now I know, before you say it, D&G is a problematic brand, but I do love fashion, and it was a real treat for the eyes, I have to admit. The dedication and craftsmanship that the designers and seamstresses have put into all of these pieces is absolutely immaculate, and I actually found this exhibit to be one of my favorites from the whole trip, and we really stumbled upon it more than anything. Afterwards, we had a pasta feast, and that was the end of that day. Now, our last morning in Rome, we decided to go see the Vatican in the daylight before we left. But as it turned out, they were allowing folks in for Mass, so we followed the tourists inside St. Peter's Basilica to get a glimpse of the excitement. I find the opulence of Catholicism quite bewildering, but I enjoyed every detail as quickly as possible before I felt we were overstaying our welcome. Our train would depart from Rome Termini to Florence, so we arrived there with time for lunch before the ride. Long-distance rail isn't really available in Canada, but it's such a fantastic way to travel. The seats were a little squished and the air conditioning was lacking, but I had time to go through some footage and enjoyed the rolling scenery before we arrived in Florence in no time. Now, many people had built up my expectations of Florence, insisting that I would love it, so I did book the most time here over the course of the 2 weeks. Our accommodations were in Santo Spirito, in the south side of the city, and I booked this one specifically as it came with a backyard featuring Kika the cat. And not only her, but there were 2 funny turtles as well. I took the opportunity here as well to do some painting while I was in the garden, some very mediocre watercolor painting, and it was actually my first attempt at art of the entire trip. Let me explain why that was. Okay, first of all, hello from the present day. Let me explain to you why I feel like I struggle so much to make art when I'm on holiday. Exactly the same thing happened while I was in Japan last September. I did not draw for the full 2 weeks that I was away. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this. I think the most simple explanation is that I'm simply too busy to actually make any art. And by the time that I'm in a downtime part of my day, I'm too tired to want to sit down and like labor over something creative. And perhaps if I was traveling solo, there would be more time to stop and smell the roses, to stop and do some sketching. But when I'm with my partner, Mark, obviously, any time that I spend making art, he has to find something else to do. And yeah, it just doesn't like lend itself to creating opportunities to make illustrations, paintings, whatever. I also kind of forgot about this until I started writing my script and I was like, why did I not make any art while I was in Rome whatsoever? And I actually pinched a nerve in my back on like the second day that we were there, and it was causing my right arm to experience pain, and I couldn't even carry like my handbag across my torso, so I had to turn it into a fanny pack instead. So that's a pretty good excuse, I would say, having an injury. But you know what? I'm gonna be real with you. I'm in a weird state with my art right now. Most of the art that I've been doing has been for work, and I'm having a really hard time finding my like personal voice outside of my work-related art. And yeah, I guess these are kind of excuses, but I'm more just explaining to you because I'm an art YouTuber, but this video has pretty much nothing to do with art. I also don't know why I decided to bring along watercolor because I am not a watercolor artist. I got this little palette and I was like, great, this will be super easy to travel with because acrylic wash comes in tubes. But because I knew I was holding myself back with this material that I wasn't familiar with, I resolved to pick up some gouache while I was there. So while in Florence, I did buy a beginner 5-set black-white CMY set of designer gouache, just so that I wouldn't have the excuse of not having the materials that I wanted to work with. Anyway, back to the video. The next day was our first chance to explore Florence. Let me take the moment to stress again how cripplingly hot it was. The heat had already overwhelmed me multiple times and was becoming hard to bear. We had an early morning booking, however, and after a breakfast at a very cute cafe, we headed to Santa Maria Cathedral, which, I'm sorry, easily one of the most spectacular buildings I have ever seen, to climb the Duomo. It's a claustrophobia-inducing 483 steps inside of the building's walls to the top of Brunelleschi's dome. I was pretty nervous about the climb as I'm a bit out of shape and it was very hot, but truly it was worth it and was easily the best attraction that we saw in Florence. The view of the city, nothing short of stunning, and the sense of accomplishment was very palpable amongst the tourists. I would definitely do it again, and I think that you can't leave this off of your to-do list while you're in Florence. Maybe do a few extra steps. I mean, you're going to be doing 30,000 steps a day throughout your entire trip anyway, so there's that. Anyway, some well-deserved gelato before heading to the museum included in our climb ticket, which is called the Opera del Duomo. Now, this was a surprise banger museum. Lots of fantastic statues and carvings, Donatellos, as well as plaques that described in great detail all the pieces that we were looking at and the lore behind them. There were Catholic artifacts and tons of information about the design and the development of the cathedral and dome itself. And not to mention, Michelangelo's final sculpture was there as well. Very intriguing, and to think we almost skipped it. I'm not sure if we really did anything else that day, but I do know that we went to the grocery store and decided to have dinner at home, save a little bit of money after our big pasta lunch, and you know what? Hang back with a little bit of Kika time. Look at this little turt eating his watermelon. Come on. It's worth the price of admission. The next day was Uffizi Day. We crossed the Ponte Vecchio to head to the museum for open, which, to be honest, was already flooded with tourists, as is everywhere in Italy, let me tell you. Now, no filming is allowed inside of the museum, so I made it my goal to find cute and funny animals throughout all of the paintings, which I hope you will enjoy here. My favorite comes at the end, this absolutely gorgeously soft-looking puppy. I really wish I had written down the painting's name. It rained while we were inside, and today was scheduled to be the least hot day of our entire trip, so we took advantage and headed to the Boboli Gardens, where we wandered and searched out interesting birds amongst the trees. It was nice to be able to enjoy the nature without feeling overwhelmingly uncomfortable. Still a little uncomfortable. Florence's streets are super tightly packed, and the heat is like captured in that, and that paired with all of the cars and the scooters, the fact that the sidewalks are non-existent, the bustle, all the people, the tourists, is very difficult for me to handle, and this escape to nature was helping to calm me. Very much needed. One last destination on our outdoor adventure was the Piazzale Michelangelo, where in fact a copy of David actually stands, and it overlooks a vista view of the city. Another multi-step ascension to get there, but definitely worthwhile. I really can't get enough of that dome. With the earlier rain, the mosquitoes bloomed in the streets and especially in the backyard, but I wanted to hang out there, so I coated myself in bug spray and we went to attempt some laundry. Mark solved the puzzle for us and we finally had clean underpants once again around the halfway mark of our trip. There's nothing like doing something domestic while you're on holiday, right? Alright, now the next day, Mark and I actually split up for the day. He wanted to head over to Pisa, so he caught a train and went in that direction, but I took the time to, do a little shopping around the city. There's a ton of vintage shops selling a very wide variety of stuff in Florence. A lot of it is more on the higher end, largely upscale designer fashion side, which is fun to flip through, but not necessarily accessible for me. This white dress was very cute, styled up though, so I did grab it. Trust me, it's cute. I walked around a ton and popped into every shop that I came across, but I didn't buy a whole lot. My goth-esque tastes were not super catered to. Lots of bright colors and patterns, which is nice to see, but not what I really like to wear. But I also had a young Italian man ask me out on a date, and a middle-aged American dude who tried to sell me some weed. After I could walk no more, I found my haven, the Florence Cat Cafe. I do try to visit all of the ethical cat cafes in every city that I travel to. This one boasts I think about 8 resident cats. And I spent a lot longer in here than I expected. I was chatting with a friendly exchange student from America, and I was letting Zuzu the kitty cat nap on top of my purchases. By this time, Mark was nearly home, so I headed back to see Kika in the garden and refresh myself. Now listen, can there just be a section on accommodation websites for places that have cats? Because I swear to God, I would pay a premium. But tonight was our chance to take in one of the local cuisines. It's called bistecca, which is basically just a giant steak. It's a Florentine special, and yeah, we ate all of that. You order sides with it. We got some garlicky beans and spinach, and they were super amazing too. The next morning was David Day, and it was actually our last attraction that we would see in Florence. It wasn't meant to be our last day, but it turned out that the following day there was going to be a transit strike affecting the bus schedule, so we decided to travel to Greve in Chianti early, a Tuscan town with numerous relaxing B&Bs. They call it agro-tourism locations. Ours was up a big old hill in 35 Celsius sun, and yep, that's how I looked pretty much the entire trip, let me tell ya. And thank goodness I booked this place specifically to take advantage of the pool. It was picturesque, but there were a lot of bugs that kept spooking us. We are indoor cats, what can I say? Now, we would only be here for 2 full days, one being a bonus day now, and we intended to take it slow. The B&B had breakfast provided, nice little continental spread, meaning we could stay on site all day until dinner time, the perfect chance to catch up on Top Chef and do some painting finally. This little window nook had not only a beautiful view, but was right in the downstream of the air conditioning of our room, so it was the perfect place to get in about 2 hours of painting. And I don't know why I chose to paint this goose. It just really spoke to me, but yeah, I enjoyed using the designer gouache, which is slightly different from my usual acrylic gouache. Anyway, each evening we would descend into the town for dinner, and we got to see some swallows and their nests up close in this area. So beautiful. You guys, if you don't know I love birds, that's a tuna fact. I don't think I filmed anything the next day, but that night there was an absolutely spectacular storm that woke us up, so I got some clips for you guys. Pretty cool, am I right? As quickly as we came to Greve, we left while the heat and the pressure of our trip had really been starting to get to me. I think the pace in Greve was able to reset me completely. I was feeling pretty homesick by this point, but a couple of days in the fairly well air-conditioned room and swimming pool was just what the doctor ordered, because we had one more stop, Venice. Okay, let me tell you now, Venice is amazing. We had only booked 1 full day to spend here, which in hindsight was absolutely a mistake, but we were keen to take advantage of the time that we did have as well as we could. Venice has no cars, which apparently is my fantasy world. Everything about it is unlike anything else that I've ever seen, and while this central tourist area is pretty rammed and a little bit cartoonish with like all the street vendors and cheap souvenirs on every corner, there's so much more to Venice outside of the core to explore. There's narrow alleyways you can lose yourself in. We stumbled across this art gallery exhibit with a focus on cats, and this marked the return of the city water fountains, which we sorely missed in Venice. Our first evening here was spent simply walking around and exploring until our legs gave out from under us and landed us into yet another giant bowl of pasta. Actually, only a couple of meals the whole trip that we had were short of magical. That is the one thing Italy does well, food, above anything else. On our only full day in Venice, Mark happened to rise before the sun and wanted to go out and take some photos. He returned later after I slept in, and we went on another stroll together, and I swear, all of these shots you're seeing, I took even more of this town than I am sharing with you here. I find the water extremely calming, and all the buildings were so unique, and being speckled with all of the plant life as well, it's just the perfect combination of aesthetic for me. Mark got tired and I was left on my own adventures, which started with a cicchetti snack, which I gather is just tasty stuff on a baguette slice, and an Aperol spritz to go, and I had the energy to trek over to the Library Aqua Alta, a charming bookshop with 6 resident felines. Now, I only spotted one, but I love the book selection, and frankly, left with a handful in tow. I must say, books are my favorite souvenir, which is rather inconvenient given how heavy they are in your bags. Afterwards, I continued along with my solo journey, and I found Venice to be what I had been looking for all trip. It was calm, it was labyrinthine, and filled with art galleries, lots of small shops, bookstores. I even found a thrift store where everything was €3. There were more vintage stores and surprises around every corner. I was even able to take a gondola across the Grand Canal for €2. We looked into a private tour and it was €80 for 30 minutes. We said, not today, Satan. More pre-dinner snacks and another Aperol spritz before meeting up with Mark for our final meal. I'll be honest, during this meal, I indulged a little bit too hard, a little bit sad to be leaving Venice so quickly, and drank a little too much and drew a little portrait of our waiter to give him as a souvenir. Now, there was no time to spare the next day to get to Venice Airport for our flight. It was really happening. Our trip was over. All right, everyone, that's it. That was my holiday. I do have a bunch of stuff that didn't kind of fit into the flow of the video that I wanted to mention before we finish things up, so bear with me a little bit longer. I did want to make mention for any fellow travelers who are Anglophones out there, English was literally no issue to use basically everywhere. I don't think there was a single instance where we weren't able to get through with at least simple English in explaining what we wanted wherever we went. And it was actually kind of fun. We got to interact with a lot of fellow tourists as well, because there's so many tourists from all over the place everywhere, and being able to actually have conversations with strangers is something I quite enjoy. The opportunity came up a few times. One thing that I thought was really unexpected about this trip is that when I was doing my research and I was asking my followers and my friends, like, have you been to Italy? Where were your favorite, where was your favorite place to spend time? Everybody swore up and down that Florence was amazing, Florence was all that, and that I should be booking all of my time, or as much time there as possible. And I totally regret that. I'm sorry, I don't know what I missed in Florence that maybe other people were able to find, or maybe it's changed a lot over the last few years, but it was described as being full of hip little shops, and you could get lost in the streets, and like the cafes and restaurants and blah blah blah, and like the art and galleries, and I didn't find any of that, frankly. Like, I found the vintage shops, which are all really expensive, and like a few boutiques and stuff like that here and there, but not by any stretch of the imagination what I was imagining through what people were telling me. But I did find that in Venice, so I'm gonna give you my personal opinion. Venice was what people said Florence would be, and if I was to do it again, and maybe I will do it again, I would go to Milan and Venice and kind of hang around North Italy, because I feel like got the Colosseum out of the way, got the Trevi Fountain, saw all the good stuff there. There's only so much money and so much time to travel, so I don't think I'll be doubling back to Rome or Florence anytime soon. Speaking of money, man, this was an expensive trip. Everything in Italy is super expensive, and that's because I live in Canada, and the Canadian dollar compared to the USD and the euro is quite weak right now, and has been for years, frankly. And on top of the sort of tourist tax that you literally pay, first of all, but secondarily pay on pretty much everything that you do, you need to pay admission to every attraction, all of the restaurants. I mean, you could look for stuff that was less touristy. We did find several restaurants and cafes where it wasn't as expensive as most of the other ones that we found were, but if you spend all your time looking for like the cheapest place to eat, like you're gonna starve. And I think as well, because of this whole extreme tourism phenomenon, finding things that are authentic wasn't really something that we were able to pick up on. There's definitely a spectrum that exists, but yeah, I wouldn't go into it expecting that you're gonna be able to find you know, the authentic Italian experience in these major cities. I think if you want something like that, perhaps some of the smaller cities or towns would be more where you would want to go. There's also the phenomenon of having to pay for all of your water that you drink at restaurants, and I drink a ton of water. It's kind of my thing. That's why I loved all those water fountains in Rome and Venice. I really wish Florence had them too. So it ended up being, you know, every meal we'd probably be spending like $10 just on water. And then there's this thing called a cover charge or a coperto, which is like kind of like a baked in tip. It's like if you are at a cafe and you buy a cappuccino, it's like €1.50 for your cappuccino if you stand at the bar and drink it. But if you want it to sit in the cafe, it's like €5. And that's pretty bad, but then you do pay them, no, please don't knock over the camera. You do pay that same cover charge for every meal that you eat, and it's usually about €3. So that's $5 per person, $10 just for the cover charge. And yeah, you don't tip like you do here in North America, but I don't think I like either system very much. I'm gonna go with Japan's system of just like, presumably all of the costs are baked into the product price. Because don't get me wrong, I want everybody to be paid fairly for their time and their efforts, but I really wish that there weren't all these little nickel and dime kind of moments when the bill lands in front of you that just really made basically every meal that we ate out, I would say at least $100 for 2 people, Canadian, if not more. I think that the sense of like, you're gonna get ripped off was very much in the front and back of my mind the whole time, and it was difficult for me to like let go of that really not wanting to get ripped off feeling. I think it was just, I should have just accepted it and stopped fighting it, because you can only try your best to make good decisions. And the decision fatigue, being on holiday for 2 weeks, like yeah, we had some stuff planned in advance, but a lot of it was just decisions on the fly, and that's a lot of decisions. I've got a peanut where my brain should be, and the peanut shell was cracking into pieces by the end of the trip, let me tell you. I just wanted to say these things because I know that this whole video is very idealized, and I do want to share with you how cool it was to be able to explore a new part of the world. But you know, there were ups and downs. The heat, I must stress one more time, was unbearable, frankly, and I would never go back in the summer. Absolutely, spring or fall is gonna be it for me. So I'm super grateful to have went. I do now have some art that I've been working on inspired by the trip itself. That is going to be for the Lunchbox Club and the Big Lunch Club this month in my Patreon. Thank you to everybody over in Patreon who is helping to support the channel. So some of these people are subscribed for just $1, where they get digital downloads, extra video content, and a back catalog of 8 years. This is like my 8-year anniversary of posting on Patreon. You guys fighting? Look at this. Look at this. This is what I have to put up with. And some of these people are also subscribed at $10 or $25 tiers to get mailable rewards. So yes, for the Lunchbox and the Big Lunch Clubs this month, we are doing a Cats in Italy theme. These two guys, last month they were traveling, so it was like a travel and airplane themed set. This month they have landed in Italy and they are going on tour, so I have a sticker sheet which is really cute. I have a single sticker inspired by the David statue, and I have a set of 3 postcard prints that are multimedia. Mark took these photographs while we were on holiday, and I've drawn my 2 dear sons, you know, enjoying the sights and sounds across Italy just as we did. So if you are interested in any of these rewards, you can go to the link down below at patreon.com/artbytuna to support the channel. Every single penny goes a long way, helps me to take breaks sometimes, but also helps me to buy new merchandise, which you can find at conventions across Canada. I still am going to. I'm in Winnipeg this weekend, so if you do see this video on launch day, I'm at Icon, and then in August, I will be going to Edmonton and Courtney, BC, in addition to a number of conventions in the Vancouver area. Finally, you can find that information right here. Actually, I'll just pop it up. It's my little graphic for where I'm going to be for the rest of the summer. And yeah, thank you for sitting all the way to the end of this video. I would love to know if you've been to Italy. Like, what were your thoughts? Do you agree with anything? Did I miss anything? And maybe like, where should I travel next? Even though I just want to go back to Tokyo, I'm telling you, Tokyo is so good. It's like made for me. This hole was made for me. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. We got more con vlogs coming. Thank you for enjoying this little travel vlog interruption. Stay sparkly, don't let the cruel world dull your shine, and I will see you next time. Bye!